My name is John Anderson. I'm 35 years old, and I live in a quiet suburb of Houston, Texas, with my wife, Linda. We've been married for 10 years. Life here is pretty routine. I'm a marketing manager, and Linda works as an accountant. Our house sits on a cul-de-sac, and most days are filled with the hum of lawnmowers and the distant laughter of kids playing. It was a regular Wednesday evening when everything changed. I had just come home from work and was putting away groceries when I noticed something odd in the bathroom trash can. A pregnancy test box. My heart skipped a beat. 2 years ago, I had a vasectomy, so this made no sense. "Linda," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. "Yeah," she replied, not looking up. "Can you come here for a minute?" I said, my voice tightening despite my efforts. She walked in, wiping her hands on a towel. "What's up?" I held up the box. "Care to explain this?" Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might faint. She sank onto the edge of the bathtub, burying her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry, John. I didn't want you to find out like this." "What do you mean?" I demanded, my heart pounding in my chest. "You didn't want me to find out what?" Linda looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I had an affair, John. It's over now, but I messed up. I'm so sorry." I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. "With who?" I managed to ask. "Mike Wilson," she said quietly. "I met him at Karen's birthday party a few months ago. It started as just talking, but then I couldn't listen anymore. I stormed out of the house, needing to clear my head. I drove aimlessly for a while before ending up at my dad's place. He was surprised to see me but didn't ask too many questions. I crashed on his couch that night, my mind racing with anger, hurt, and confusion. The next morning, I called into work and told them I needed some time off. My boss was understanding, though I didn't go into details. I spent the next few weeks at my dad's, trying to process what had happened. It felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. When I finally returned home, Linda and I had a long, painful conversation. She showed me the last text exchange with Mike, where she had ended things weeks ago. "I want to make this right, John," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." I wanted to believe her, but the betrayal cut deep. "We need to set some ground rules," I said. "You keep a GPS app on your phone, and we're going to see a therapist. This is going to take time." "Anything," she agreed. "I'll do anything." We started therapy the following week. The sessions were intense, bringing up a lot of emotions and issues we hadn't dealt with before. It was hard, but it also felt like a step in the right direction. We began to communicate better and slowly started rebuilding our relationship. One evening, over dinner, I looked at Linda and asked, "Why Mike? What did he have that I didn't?" Linda sighed, tears welling up in her eyes. "It wasn't about him, John. It was about me feeling disconnected and lost. I made a terrible mistake, and I hate myself for it." Her honesty was painful but necessary. I realized that if we were going to move forward, we both had to be completely open with each other. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were starting to face our problems head-on, and that had to count for something. Our life wasn't perfect, but we were committed to making it work. It was going to be a long, difficult journey, but we were in it together. And for now, that was enough. Returning home after those weeks away felt strange. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a battleground. I walked in, dropped my bag by the door, and took a deep breath. Linda was in the living room, waiting for me. "Hi, John," she said softly, standing up as I entered. "Hi," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The tension was thick, but I was determined to push through it. We sat down and had the long, painful conversation we had been avoiding. I laid out my conditions for staying together. She had to keep a GPS app on her phone. We would see a therapist regularly, and above all, complete honesty. "These are the rules if we're going to make this work," I said, looking her straight in the eyes. "Understand," she replied, nodding. "I'll do anything, John. I just want us to be okay again." Our first therapy session was the following week. Walking into the therapist's office, I felt a mix of hope and dread. Dr. Patel, a kind woman in her 50s, greeted us warmly and made us feel as comfortable as possible. "Let's start with why you're here," Dr. Patel said, settling into her chair. Linda took a deep breath. "I had an affair, and it broke our trust. We want to rebuild, but we don't know how." Listened, feeling the anger bubbling up again. "I just don't understand why," I said, my voice cracking. "Why, Mike? Why now?" Dr. Patel nodded. "John, those are valid questions. We'll explore them together, but it's important to focus on rebuilding trust and understanding each other's perspectives." Therapy was tough. Each session brought up buried emotions and forced us to confront uncomfortable truths. But it was also a relief to have a space where we could talk openly. Slowly, we started to make progress. At home, we tried to create new routines to strengthen our bond. One night, while cooking dinner together, I turned to Linda. "Do you think we can ever really move past this?" I asked. "I hope so," she replied, stirring the pasta. "I'm doing everything I can to prove to you that I'm committed. I know it'll take time." We began to share small moments of normalcy again, watching TV shows, taking walks in the neighborhood, and even planning a trip to Dominica. These moments felt fragile, but they were steps in the right direction. Our trip to Dominica was a turning point. It was the first time in months that we could relax and enjoy each other's company without the constant shadow of the affair looming over us. Walking on the beach one evening, Linda reached for my hand. "I'm really glad we did this," she said, her voice soft. "Me too," I replied, squeezing her hand. "It feels good to just be together." Back home, reality hit again. One day, while at work, I received a message from Linda. "Mike's been texting me again." I blocked him, but I wanted you to know. My heart sank. It felt like a never-ending nightmare. That evening, we discussed what to do. "We can't let him keep doing this," I said, frustration evident in my voice. "I know," Linda agreed. "Maybe we should involve the police." "I think you're right," I replied. "We can't let him control our lives anymore." We contacted the police and provided all the evidence of Mike's harassment. They assured us they would start an investigation. It was a small relief, but it didn't erase the emotional turmoil. As we navigated these challenges, I realized something important. Our journey was not just about overcoming the affair, but also about learning to communicate better, to support each other, and to rebuild our relationship on a stronger foundation. One evening, after a particularly tough therapy session, Linda turned to me. "I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'm not expecting things to be perfect overnight, but I'm here, and I'm not giving up on us." I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "I appreciate that," I said. "We've got a long way to go, but I'm willing to keep trying if you are." Linda nodded. "One day at a time." It was a small, hopeful step. Our life wasn't perfect, but we were learning to navigate the new normal together. facing each obstacle with a little more strength and resilience each day. Life started to regain a semblance of normalcy after our trip to Dominica. Linda and I were making progress in therapy, and we both felt cautiously optimistic about our future. But, as with all things, the past has a way of creeping back into the present. One Tuesday morning, I was sipping my coffee and going through emails when my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. I opened it, and my heart dropped. It was a video of Linda with Mike from the affair. Felt a mix of anger and despair. Without thinking, I forwarded the video to Linda with a single word: "Why?" Minutes later, my phone rang. It was Linda, her voice shaky. "John, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I have no idea how he got this or why he's sending it now. I thought we were past this." I replied, my voice trembling with frustration. "Why can't he just leave us alone?" Linda was silent for a moment. "I think we need to confront him, John. This has to stop." The idea of confronting Mike was both terrifying and necessary. We couldn't let him control our lives any longer. That evening, we discussed our plan. "We should meet him somewhere public," Linda suggested. "Maybe a coffee shop. That way, we're in a safe space." "Okay," I agreed. "But I'm not going to let him intimidate us. This ends now." The next day, we met Mike at a coffee shop downtown. The tension was palpable as we sat down across from him. Mike had a smug look on his face, clearly enjoying the discomfort he was causing. "What do you want, Mike?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mike leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I just wanted to remind you that Linda and I had something special. Maybe she hasn't told you everything." Linda spoke up, her voice firm. "We're here to tell you to stop. Stop contacting me. Stop sending these videos. We've moved on, and you need to do the same." Mike sneered. "Oh, have you? Because it looks like you're still dealing with the fallout." I felt a surge of anger. "Listen, man. Whatever you think you had, it's over. We're trying to rebuild our lives, and you're not part of that. So back off." Mike's expression hardened. "We'll see about that." We left the coffee shop, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and fear. "Do you think he'll actually stop?" asked Linda as we walked to the car. "I hope so," she replied, her voice weary. "But we need to be prepared in case he doesn't." That night, we talked about our options. It was clear that involving the police again was necessary. We contacted the officer handling our case and explained the new harassment. They took it seriously and promised to escalate their investigation. Days turned into weeks, and while Mike's messages stopped, the emotional impact lingered. I found myself constantly checking my phone, fearing another surprise. Linda noticed my anxiety and tried to reassure me. "We're doing everything we can," she said one evening. "We just have to trust the process and each other." Her words helped, but the sense of vulnerability was hard to shake. In therapy, we discussed how to cope with these feelings. Dr. Patel suggested focusing on positive experiences and rebuilding our sense of security. "Why don't you plan something special together?" she suggested. "Create new memories that can help overshadow the past." We decided to take a weekend trip to a nearby cabin. It was a chance to disconnect from everything and focus on each other. The fresh air and quiet surroundings were a welcome change. We hiked, cooked meals together, and talked about our hopes for the future. On the last night, sitting by the fireplace, Linda turned to me. "I know things have been incredibly hard, but I believe we're getting stronger. Do you?" I nodded, feeling a warmth that had been missing for a long time. "Yeah, I do. We're not there yet, but we're moving forward, one step at a time." As we drove back home, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Life would continue to throw challenges our way, but as long as we faced them together, I believed we could overcome anything. Our journey was far from over, but we were learning to navigate it, hand in hand. After our confrontation with Mike and the rejuvenating trip to the cabin, life started to settle into a new routine. The police investigation into Mike's harassment continued, and while the threat of him lingered, we focused on rebuilding our relationship. One evening, as Linda and I were finishing dinner, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the GPS app. I had insisted Linda keep on her phone. It wasn't the first time I'd checked it, but each time I did, a part of me felt guilty. "John, you know you can trust me, right?" Linda said, noticing my glance at the phone. "I know," I replied, putting the phone down. "It's just, sometimes I need that reassurance." "I understand," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "We'll get through this." One of the biggest challenges we faced was the lingering doubt and the slow rebuild of trust. Every day was a test, chance to either strengthen our bond or let the cracks widen. It was a constant battle between my desire to trust Linda and the nagging fear of betrayal. One day at work, I got an email from my boss asking if I could take on a new project. It was a high-profile assignment that could really boost my career, but it would require late nights and extra hours. I discussed it with Linda that evening. "It's a big opportunity, but it means I'll be busier than usual. I don't want this to take away from the progress we're making." Linda looked thoughtful. "I think you should go for it. We're in a good place, and I can handle things here. Plus, it might be good for you to focus on something positive." "Are you sure?" I asked, wanting to make sure she was okay with it. "Yes," she replied, smiling. "We've got this." Taking on the project was both exciting and stressful. The late nights were tough, and sometimes I wondered if I was making the right choice. But each time I came home, Linda was there, supportive and understanding. One night, after a particularly grueling day, I came home to find Linda waiting with a warm meal and a glass of wine. "I thought you could use a little relaxation," she said. "Thank you," I replied, grateful. "This means a lot." As we sat down to eat, we talked about our days, laughing and sharing stories. It felt like a return to normalcy, a reminder of why we were fighting so hard to make this work. But then, the unexpected happened. Linda's phone rang, and I saw the name on the screen, Mike. My heart sank. She looked at me, panic in her eyes, and then answered the call. "Mike, what do you want?" she said, her voice firm but strained. I couldn't hear his response, but I could see the tension in Linda's face. After a few moments, she hung up and turned to me. "He's threatening to release more videos if we don't pay him." Anger and frustration bubbled up inside me. "We can't let him blackmail us. We need to go back to the police." Linda nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, John. I never wanted any of this to happen." I hugged her tightly, trying to provide some comfort. "We'll get through this together." The next day, we went back to the police with the new information. The officer handling our case was supportive and assured us they would take immediate action. It was a small relief, but the emotional toll was heavy. In therapy, we talked about the impact of Mike's continued harassment. Dr. Patel helped us develop strategies to cope with the stress and maintain our focus on rebuilding our relationship. "Focus on the positives," she advised. "Continue to create new positive experiences together." One weekend, we decided to go on a spontaneous road trip. We drove to a small town a few hours away, exploring the local sights and enjoying each other's company. It was a chance to escape the pressure and just be ourselves. As we walked through the town's main street, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace. "I'm really glad we did this," I said. "Me too," Linda replied, smiling. "It feels good to get away and just enjoy the moment." These small escapes and positive experiences were crucial in helping us heal. They reminded us of the love and connection that had brought us together in the first place. Returning home, we faced our reality with renewed strength. The challenges were still there, but we were learning to navigate them with resilience and hope. Our journey was far from over, but with each step, we grew closer and more determined to overcome whatever came our way. The weeks following Mike's last attempt at blackmail were a roller coaster. The police intensified their investigation, and finally, we received some good news. Mike was arrested for harassment and blackmail. It was a relief, but the emotional scars he left behind were deep. Life began to stabilize again, but there was still a lot of healing to do. One Saturday morning, Linda and I were sitting on the porch, enjoying our coffee. The sun was shining, and the neighborhood was peaceful. It felt like the calm after a long storm. "I'm glad it's over," Linda said, breaking the silence. "I feel like we can finally start to move forward." "Me too," I replied, looking at her. "But there's still a lot we need to work on. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight." She nodded. "I know, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." That willingness, that commitment, was what gave me hope. We had been through so much, but we were still here, still fighting for our marriage. One of the biggest challenges was finding a way to fully trust Linda again. The GPS app helped, but it wasn't a permanent solution. During therapy, Dr. Patel suggested a different approach. "John, maybe it's time to start weaning off the GPS app," she said during one session. "It's been a useful tool, but it's also a crutch. Building trust means taking some risks." The idea made me anxious, but I knew she was right. I discussed it with Linda that evening. "What do you think?" I asked. "Are you okay with turning off the GPS app?" Linda took a deep breath. "Yes, I think it's a good idea. It's scary, but I want us to move forward." We agreed to start by turning it off during certain hours of the day and gradually increasing that time. It was nerve-wracking, but it also felt like a necessary step toward healing. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, I came home to find Linda in the kitchen, cooking dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, and for a moment, it felt like old times. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, smiling. "Busy, but not too bad," I replied, setting my bag down. "Yours?" "Good. I tried a new recipe. I hope you like it." As we sat down to eat, realized how far we had come. Despite everything, we were still able to share these small, everyday moments. After dinner, we decided to go for a walk. The evening was cool, and the streets were quiet. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying each other's presence. "Do you ever think about what the future holds?" Linda asked suddenly. "All the time," I replied. "It used to scare me, but now I feel more hopeful. I think we're going to be okay." "I do too," she said, squeezing my hand. "We're stronger than we think." As we continued our walk, I felt a sense of peace. The future was uncertain, but I knew we could face it together. One day, a few weeks later, Linda came home with a big smile on her face. "I have some news," she said, looking excited. "What is it?" I asked, curious. "I got promoted at work," she exclaimed. "I'm going to be managing a new team." "That's amazing," I replied, genuinely happy for her. "You've worked so hard for this." Her promotion was a testament to her resilience and dedication. It also meant more stability for us, both financially and emotionally. We decided to celebrate by having a small dinner with close friends. It was a night filled with laughter, good food, and the kind of support that reminded us we weren't alone in this journey. As the night wound down and our friends left, Linda and I sat on the couch, reflecting on everything we had been through. "I'm proud of us," she said softly. "We didn't let this break us." "Me too," I replied, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "We're a team, and we're getting stronger every day." Life continued to present its challenges, but with each one, we grew more resilient. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was ours. If you found this story engaging and relatable, please consider subscribing to our channel. Like, comment, and share your thoughts and experiences with us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon.